Up there, YouTube? Chip here with the Iconic Sportcycle Moto Vlog. Oh, what's up? Hey, good morning, YouTube. Looks like the Lord has granted me another beautiful day to ride to work. And this morning I wanted to talk to you a little about something a little different. We got Father's Day coming up here real soon, and I think I want to talk to you a little bit about my dad this morning. My dad's always been a bit of a kidder. Always likes to rub it in when he gets the opportunity. Big tease, as they say. I remember when my first great-grandchild was born, we called up and said, hey, I want to come over to see the baby. I said, sure, Dad, come on over. And of course, you get there, spend about 2 seconds looking at the baby, and then the next 20 minutes rubbing it in about what an old man I am, and that I'm a great-grandfather now. For whatever reason, it didn't sink in that, hey, Dad, if I'm a great-grandfather, what exactly does that make you? So I let him enjoy the moment before I pointed out the obvious. Well, it was obvious to everybody else but him for some reason. And let nature take its course, let that sink in for a little bit. So, of course, the look on his face was priceless, to say the least. So, yeah, my dad's always been a bit of a kidder. But I just want to talk to you a little bit about this guy that I call my dad. You know, I didn't always call him Dad. I used to call him by his first name, Dan. You know, like many families, my brother and I kind of grew up in what many referred to as a broken home. My real mom and dad, they didn't stay married for very long. You know, my mom was a single mom trying to raise two little monsters. Can't imagine what the challenges of that were like. She spent a little time trying to date, looking for Mr. Right. You know, found a couple of Mr. Right nows, but took a while to find the right guy. It's happened one summer. We were, you know, out on Cape Cod. My grandmother had a trailer out there. We used to spend summers at. And she met this lovable little fuzzball that she seemed to have a real good time with. They had fun together, going out to dinner, and my mom used to like to jitterbug, and they used to go out jitterbugging together and dancing, and they seemed to have a really good time enjoying each other's company. And eventually we started doing the family thing, where we started going on family picnics to the pond, and we'd go on to the drive-in together. And I guess it wasn't long after that before things started getting serious, when my mom and dad decided to get married. So they got married, and we got our first apartment together as a family in Centerville on Cape Cod. And things, you know, started developing. We started developing a little family together. And, you know, things were progressing along quite nicely. And then just before Christmas, my dad decided to get a part-time job so that we could have a little bit better Christmas. Wanted us to have some nice things that year. And my mom pulled us aside, me and my brother, and she said, hey, guys, this year I want you to give your dad a present. Instead of calling him Danny, I want you to start calling him Dad. Yeah, it seems like a simple request, I'm sure. You know, he was doing the job and doing it well. But, you know, being a kid, you know, you think about stupid things that kids think about. It's like, hey, no, Ma, you know, we already got a dad. You know, you remember Dad? He's the tall, good-looking guy with hair, not this guy. And, of course, my mom said, yeah, I remember that guy. But listen, you know, you're going to do this for me because, you know, this is really important. And so, you know, we complied because, hey, you know, Mom was pretty much, in our world, the boss of everything. So we started calling him Danny Dad, and at first it was kind of uncomfortable, you know, sometimes just because we were so used to calling him Danny. Didn't mean to, you know, wanted to do the right thing and, you know, call him Dad. And he started, you know, of course, doing the things where started taking us to our baseball games and taking us to Boy Scouts, and drop us up and we'd say, hey, thanks, Dad, and the kids would go, hey, is that your dad? I say, yeah, that's my stepdad, he's married to my mom. And so, you know, it was kind of a little separation there. Don't know where that came from, but, you know, kids being kids and the things kids think about and focus on. You know, so, you know, life was going on pretty well, and we moved to a little town in Picasset. My parents had gotten a house there, and nice little place, nice place to grow up, Picasset. And then as my dad started getting us involved with the local sports teams and Boy Scouts, we started taking us to Little League, and turns out that the Scoutmaster and the Little League coach were one and the same, Mr. Ralph Brown, great pillar of the community. Mr. Brown was quite the community organizer. Went out and did good things for the community without taking a pat on the back. It wasn't like running for office or anything. Just a good guy. And aside from being the Little League coach and the local Scoutmaster, he was also a fireman and one of the very first paramedics. So, as my dad was starting to get to know Mr. Brown, he became the assistant coach to our baseball team. Made for some more uncomfortable moments in my life. But I guess it's kind of like having your mom be your teacher. But they got to be good friends, and it wasn't long before Mr. Brown had talked my dad into becoming a volunteer fireman. Now that was really cool, having a fireman in the house. Aside from all the cool gear he also had what they called a base station radio. The base station had a big alarm on the side, and anytime there was something happening in the neighborhood, the bell would go off, the buzzers would go off, and then you start getting announcements of what was happening. And if my dad's unit was expected to respond, it would call out his unit. And it was kind of cool. He'd go out and once a month they'd go out and do some training. And he always seemed to have fun with the guys, so it was kind of cool. And then I guess it was about a year later, and it was getting close to Christmas time again. I guess you might call it a Christmas miracle. We were in bed, it was late. It was, a few days before Christmas. Oh, and something I need to point out, that particular year, my dad was not working at the moment because he had got an infection in his feet. Couldn't put on shoes, or had to walk on crutches, I should say, could barely walk. His feet were so swelled up. And, the bell went off in the middle of the night. Woke everybody up. We went all rushing to the radio to see what was going on. And as we were listening, there was a structure fire call. So my dad started to get ready. My mom said, no, Danny, you can't go. You can't even walk. You can't even put your shoes on. So he's kind of slowed down a little bit. But then the call came back through again, and it said there were children trapped inside the structure, that they were, going to need some help. So my dad continued to get dressed and, try and get his boots on and put his gear on. And my mom started begging him, Danny, you can't go. You can't even walk. How are you going to go do this? And, he said, listen, Sally, I just have to do this. I got to go. And so then, he left, and, and you got to understand in our world, he pretty much, tried to do everything my mom wanted. So to see him do something that she didn't want him to do was kind of unusual. So as he left, I could see my mom was really upset. So I decided, hey, to be the man, I said, hey, Mom, don't worry, everything's going to be all right. And I could see that she was really, really scared. And she grabbed me by my shoulders and looked me in the eye, and she said, you don't know your dad the way I do. There are children in that fire, and he will do whatever he has to do to get them out. Now, I didn't understand really what that meant at first. It just was beyond me that, somebody would go into a fire. I mean, what kind of person does that? I just, I was a kid. I just didn't understand that. And I could see that she actually knew that he was that kind of man. For the first time in my life that I didn't see him as this lovable little fuzzball that married my mom. I saw him as the man that she saw him as, and I have to be honest, it quite scared me. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what he was going to do. So she sent me off to bed, and I didn't really want to go. I wanted to sit up and listen to the radio to know what was going on. But she sent me off to bed anyway. And as I was laying there, couldn't really fall asleep. I started thinking about how my life had changed and how much better my life had gotten since my dad came into it, and all the wonderful things he'd done for us. And I started to be afraid of, what if something happens to my dad? Well, what happens then? So it was kind of a growing experience for me. Later that morning, my mom heard my mom. She was up all night. She was up pacing, and I could hear her stirring her coffee cup over and over again, and tapping her fingernails on the table, and having one cigarette after another, just pacing back and forth. And I could tell she was really nervous. And the radio was quite busy that night, going. I could hear a lot of squawking on the radio, but I couldn't really hear what they were saying. But eventually, later on, the sun started coming up, and my dad came home. And after being up all night thinking about, my dad and how much better our lives were, I was kind of relieved that they made it home safely. And I could just hear the relief in my mom's voice as he came in the door. So, at that point I was able to kind of roll over and go to sleep. But it was kind of then that I realized, that, this is the kind of guy that I wanted to be like when I grew up. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. But I knew at that moment what kind of man I wanted to be. I wanted to be that kind of guy, the kind of guy that his wife would think that he was so brave and such a man that he would, put his life on the line for somebody else. And there was no doubt in my mom's mind. I just know that. So I knew what kind of man I wanted to be when I grew up. For some reason that very next day, at that point, I was very comfortable calling my dad Dad. And when he would drop us off at baseball and Boy Scouts, and people would say, "Hey, is that your dad?" And I go, "Yeah, that's my dad." It seemed to be all changed for me. I didn't appreciate what I had, I guess. Sometimes that's part of growing up. So now that I look back on these things, I hope that when my dad sees me and the man I've become, that he's proud of me and realizes that I try to emulate his better qualities, and I hope that he sees them reflected in me. And I hope that my children and grandchildren will see those qualities and reflect them. I know when I see them doing things that I've taught them to do well, it makes me feel good. So, Dad, this Father's Day, I just want to say thanks, Dad. I love you, Dad. I want to thank you for choosing to be my dad. You could have chosen, I'm sure, a whole nother life. That probably would have been a lot easier and maybe a little bit more fun. But you chose to stick it out and be my dad. So thanks, Dad. Love you. Happy Father's Day, Dad.